I'm going to start this interview actually with a trigger warning because we're going to be dealing with the sensitive issue of suicide. This video contains a discussion about suicide and the tragic loss of a young woman. We'll be speaking with her mother, Louise, who is going to be talking to us about how her daughter died from an adverse drug reaction to Lyrica or pregabalin. The interview is going to go through how Louise found out what had happened to her daughter in the weeks leading up to her suicide. Viewer discretion is advised for this sensitive topic. I'm Dr. Josef. It's my pleasure to be joined today by Louise. She's going to be sharing her daughter's suicide story, a drug-induced suicide story. And I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing this story with our audience.
Well, thank you for giving me a voice.
Before we go any further, tell us a little bit about what Madison was like. What was she doing in her life? Was she, working at school?
So she was a very talented, successful, she was in the beauty industry. She worked in a high-end salon, a beautiful salon. She had around 2,200 clients. She had Hair by Madison, her Instagram. I was really proud of her. She moved from home when she was 23. She was independent, lively. She loved to travel. She had dark, twisted, really funny humor. She was not quiet. And she was just a vibrant, fun, lovely young lady with a full life. She had a little dog. She had a boyfriend.
You've got a photo of her as well. Could you hold it up so we can see her?
I've got, this is her.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Beautiful hair, proud. As expected,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very proud to be her mom. So proud of her. She's my oldest daughter. You get mothers started talking about their children. Take the whole hour up. Yeah. Yeah. Very happy to be her mom. Yeah.
Thanks for inviting us into her life and your life and sharing that. Tell us, how did your daughter, Madison, end up taking psychiatric medication? What was that all about?
So the precipitating factor was the death of her best friend. Mm-hmm. She started using alcohol to self-medicate. So she sought help for the grief and for her alcohol addiction.
And how old was Madison when all of this was happening?
27.
Walk us forward from there. Her friend dies. She starts to have some problems with alcohol. What happened next?
So her friend died in August of 2019. Madison had actually sought help from our family doctor. He'd given her an antidepressant that she'd had an adverse reaction to about a year before that. That was Lexapro. And I actually kept her in my home and helped her through that.
What happened to her the first time on the medication? Just what did you notice?
She was very agitated. So it was at the 2-week point. Muscle twitches. I know the word now, but I didn't know it at the time. Akaesthesia, I believe you call it. So I kept her in the house for a few days, made her some tea, and she recovered from that not too badly. And I thought we had decided at that point that this was not for her. But later, March the 5th of 2021, she was at work and she decided she had a 10-minute telephone appointment with her family doctor where he actually prescribed 31 milligram lorazepam and 30 more Lexapro, but he called it by a different name. So she didn't know she was getting the same thing. And she went across the street to a Rexall pharmacy on her break around 3 o'clock and had it filled, no problem. And that was the beginning of the whole situation.
Okay, so let's move on forward from here. So her friend dies. She's having problems with alcohol. She's talking to her family medicine doctor over the phone. She gets prescribed Lyrica and Lexapro again, right?
Lorazepam.
Lorazepam.
Lorazepam 1 milligram, and then the Lexapro 10 milligrams. I'd like to say something about the lorazepam because I happen to work in a dentist's office, and we prescribe one milligram pill to some anxious patients. Our protocol is that if you have to arrive at your appointment 1 hour before the appointment, we take your blood pressure, and if you have a caregiver who's agreed to watch you for 24 hours, we proceed with one pill, one milligram pill. So my daughter was given 30 in a 10-minute telephone appointment, and she'd never had a prescription for that before. I found that really alarming.
Wow. And yeah, that is alarming. And, they missed the fact that they prescribed her a medication that she'd had a side effect to. It doesn't really seem like that thorough
Correct.
of an evaluation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they go by so many different names, it can be confusing. She was obviously in a vulnerable state. She sent me a text and she said, the doctor brushed me off and just gave me drugs. He didn't recommend any type of counseling for the grief. He didn't recommend detox for the alcohol problem in a hospital setting. And this was all within the standard of care because I did report him to the College of Physicians of Surgeons of Ontario. They investigated and he was found no wrongdoing. Yeah. So that's the standard of care.
It's deteriorating, and I'll make a side comment about this quickly. That's not an uncommon story that's happened. I've heard it, which is a shocking thing. But I want to stay on topic. I want to stay talking about Madison. Talk to me. What happened after that?
First of all, her townhome that she was renting sold. So she moved in with her dad, put her things in storage temporarily so she could take her time looking for a new place. So she was at her dad's. On March 24th, her dad called me at work, frantic. He said, "You have to get here right now. There's something really wrong with her, and I don't know what's going on." So I left work, went to his apartment, and I've never seen her like this before. She was really restless, really agitated. She was having a really rough time, and she kept saying, "I need to calm myself down. I need to calm myself down. I don't know what's happening." She was seeking alcohol. So her father had taken the little bit of alcohol he had in the house, beer, and dumped it down the sink. When I arrived, he had missed a bottle that he had gotten when he was traveling. So she found that bottle and she locked herself in the bathroom. So it was a frantic fight to get her out. We got her out. She screamed and ran in her bedroom and said, "Leave me alone. Nobody can help me. I got to calm myself down. So we got in the bedroom, and after a while of talking to her gently, I told her, I'd found out 2 days before that she was trying the drugs from the doctor again. And I told her, I said, "I think this is a reaction from the prescriptions you got. And I think that we need to get you to the hospital." And when I put my hand on her arm, her heart was just, and I thought she was in cardiac distress. It was very, very scary. So we finally talked her into letting us take her to the hospital, but she refused to drive with anybody but me. She just wanted to go with me. So got her in the car, and I was terrified that she would bolt or jump out because she was not in a good state. And when we got to the hospital, they separated us at the door because it was COVID. And even though she was saying, "I want my mom to stay," and I told them I think I should be with her, I wasn't allowed to go in, so I left my name and my number, and we were separated at the door, and I told them that I was going to send in a very important text on her phone that they needed to read. So I'll read you that text. I have it right here. Right there. I said, Maddie, since I can't go in with you, specifically ask them for a trauma therapist and tell them that you have had multiple attempts at antidepressant and anti-anxiety drugs and they do not work, so no drugs. Tell them you struggle with substance use issues as well. A caseworker should ask you all of this as well, or just show them this text, please. So that went in with her. I was unable to talk to anyone in the hospital until 11 o'clock that night, despite trying. I talked to one nurse, and she told me that my daughter was being moved to another hospital for psychiatric assessment, so that to call them, she'd be over there. They took her phone away for the first couple of days. Tried to get through to the unit. It was 1F Grand River Hospital in Kitchener. And either someone answered the phone, said there wasn't a nurse available, or a nurse would call back. Nobody ever did. We didn't speak to them one time. The most they did was they gave us the phone number for the common room. So there was a phone on the wall that we could talk with her. She sounded better. She got her cell phone back after a couple of days, and we were corresponding. We were all bringing her food because she hated the hospital food. We were bringing her clothes. She had us all just running, the entire family. But we weren't allowed to go in and visit her. I thought they were just detoxing her, getting her through. And after 6 days, I was at work. I was supposed to go and pick her up that evening, but she called her little sister, and who was in a university class. She left a university class and said, I've been discharged. I have to leave right now. Can you please come and get me? So her sister went to get her. Madison was standing on the sidewalk with a little garbage bag, because we were only allowed to give a little garbage bag of things. And she got in the car. And they drove off. Nobody checked to see if she made it home. Nobody gave us any instruction. There was nothing. So I asked Madison. She seemed to be a lot better. And she said that the psychiatrist had given her apyl naltrexone, a drug to help her with the alcohol cravings, which I thought, that's a good idea. They put her in AA. They had some treatments in place that weren't going to kick in for a month. And then she said, there's another one, Mom, but it's not an antidepressant. It's completely different. And I'm going to take it for my anxiety. And I didn't even embarrassingly bother to get the name of that, because I didn't realize the seriousness of the situation, as many people do not. And we never think that somebody is going to die. You just don't. So she went home. She seemed to be doing fabulous. She went back to see the family doctor on April 5th, and he wrote down that she was probably going to stop taking the apyl naltrexone at the 3-week point. She said she didn't want to go any higher with the Lyrica, just to keep it at 50 milligrams. So he wrote her a prescription for 50 milligrams, because the day she picked it up when she left the hospital, she'd been given 1 week supply of 50 milligrams and 1 week supply of 75 milligrams. So he then wrote her another prescription for 50, so she's got extras. And what I learned is it's highly addictive. It can cause hallucinations. It causes suicidal ideation, can cause suicidal ideation. So she had extra pills with her.
And may I ask, was she still taking the Lexapro when she left the hospital?
No, they took her off the Lexapro, but they kept going with the lorazepam.
Okay.
They also gave her olanzapine. There was a whole bunch of things in there that I couldn't even. So what happened when I complained to CPSO, the College of Physicians of Surgeons of Ontario, originally because I wanted to know what happened. At this point, I didn't even know if anybody did anything wrong. I just wanted to know what happened to my daughter, and they promised to do a very thorough investigation. So I waited months to get this investigation back, and when I got it, I was so disappointed. It basically sang the praises of the doctors. They didn't even have the dates right of when she was in the hospital. That's what really gave it away. They said 5 days. They didn't include her 2 days at St. Mary's. So I was dissatisfied with this. I decided to get the hospital records on my own. So I used my lawyer's letter from the estate, and I got the hospital records and the records from the family doctor. They have 30 days to get them to you. And when I got them, I sat on the floor and I read them day and night, Googling everything, trying to just figure out what happened. So what I learned was disturbing and alarming, because I learned that the day I took her to the hospital, she had actually overdosed on 15 Lexapro pills. They gaslighted that and said it was an apparent suicide attempt. I don't know about you, but if you count 15, that's a long time and that's a lot of pills. We were never told about the suicide attempt. Her main complaint was the adverse reaction to the drugs. She said, they make me feel weird. She wanted off them. She wanted help for alcohol addiction. She wanted help for her grief. She was asking for help. And it appeared to me that the cure was worse than the disease. And I'm not here, to demonize anybody, because I don't think any of us want anybody to die. I don't believe those doctors went in to do this. But people do not understand how powerful these drugs are. And she had polypharmacology. I'm starting to put it all together. She was given so many things in such a short period of time. And I believe that she died in a compulsive hallucinogenic moment where her brain was just whoosh, hijacked. She did try to call her boyfriend that day. He didn't answer. I don't think she had the ability to dial 988, to dial 911. It just came so fast. And I think she lived her worst nightmare.
Walk us forward kind of step by step from when she left the hospital to how all of this happened.
So when she left the hospital, she went back to work. She seemed fine. There was alcohol at the scene of her death, so I think she was doing the same thing she had done the previous time. She was drinking to try to calm herself down. But this time it was just so much worse, and nobody was there. So the night before she passed away, she was living with her dad, and he heard her up restless in the night. But because there was no family meeting, and we had no idea that she was trying new drugs, he went to work. He came home later that day and found her hanging from a cord.
How long had she been out of the hospital when that happened?
So it was from March the 30th to April the 13th, so 14, just 2 weeks in the 2 week point.
And during the time she was out, she was on lorazepam and Lyrica, right?
Yeah, this time April naltrexone.
Okay.
They gave her lorazepam in the hospital right up till the day she left. On the way out, she told the nurse that she felt overwhelmed and she gave her a lorazepam on the way out. Never gave her any more lorazepam after that.
Okay.
They started her on the apyl naltrexone and the Lyrica, the pregabalin.
Did you all notice anything about her behavior in the 14 days before she passed that was off to you?
Not really. She seemed fine. She was walking her dog. She was attending AA. She seemed fine. Like, there was nothing that we were really noticing that would be alarming.
Did she leave a note or any communication?
No, nothing.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing at all.
What happened after her dad found her? How did things unfold at that point?
So he called me at work. He said, "Come here now. I think Madison might be dead." That, I don't know how to describe that. I could hear a police radio in the background. And then I heard him say, "What do you mean I can't call her? That's her mother. That's her mother." I just got up from work, grabbed my keys. I said nothing to anyone. And I just drove to his apartment. So when I got there, it was lit up like a Christmas tree. There were police cars, fire truck, ambulance. And I'm thinking, this can't possibly be for my daughter. I couldn't get into the building because I couldn't think. So somebody opened the door and I just got through. I went up the 16 floors to the elevator. And when I got in, a police officer came in front and said, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm her mother." He said, you can't go past." I remember looking at his gun. I didn't care. I just shoved that man out of the way. I went into the bedroom where she was laying on the floor with the heart machine. And she was already gone. It was just, I don't know how to describe that. There's a buzzing that goes on in your head. It's like, and you just can't. All I saw was her, just her.
Talk to me about the aftermath of that. So, I mean, I imagine there's just utter shock and confusion. But how did things, I mean, you're at the stage now where you're quite certain that this was drug-induced. Talk to me about how your thoughts about what had happened changed over time as things settled afterwards.
First of all, I don't know why, mother's intuition, but at the scene of her death, I saw a police officer putting prescription pill bottles into an evidence bag. And I said to him, "I want a picture of those." So I insisted I get a picture of those. So I took a picture. Without that, I don't know really like where I would have gone, but the first phone call I made was to the pharmacist. And I looked up the two drugs. When I started to read about the Lyrica, I was beyond alarmed. I read about Northern Ireland, where their general practitioners were told to stop prescribing it because it was linked to 166 deaths. I read about the class action lawsuits with Pfizer. I just kept reading. And I thought, this has to be what happened to her. So I called the pharmacist and I said, "Listen, I found these pill bottles at the scene of my daughter's death. You filled them. She died by suicide. You know, the Lyrica causes suicide." And he snapped back real quick and he said, "No, it doesn't. That's one of the safer ones." I said, "Why don't you pull up the FDA and take another look?" And he did. And there was this pause. And he said, "Oh my gosh, it does. I'm so sorry. I'm a father." He actually started to cry on the phone. We've become friends, me and him. So that pharmacist didn't know. And I also think the psychiatrist believed that she was giving something safer as well.
Yeah, I guess you say mother's intuition. I mean, when we're deciding what's happened, you're obviously weighing different things, and you're looking for. I mean, obviously with a suicide, it's like, was there some alternative explanation other than the meds? Like, what did you what were you thinking through when you were just like, this, like, to really say this must be it?
My initial thought was murder. I fully investigated that, right down to looking at the cameras at the apartment. I studied how the cord around the neck, if it's a murder, they tend to pull straighter and tighter. It's a bigger mark. I looked for everything. I had to dismiss that fact. It didn't line up because my daughter hung a cord on a doorknob and was in sitting position against her bedroom door. So the whole weight of her body was against the door. So it's virtually impossible for that to happen, for somebody to do that and put her, and the cord was not, it was consistent with asphyxiation. So that was my first thought. I thoroughly investigated that, believe me, and mothers will investigate better than the FBI. Trust me on this. We will not quit. We don't care what you do to us. We're going to get down to the truth. So that was my first thought. After that, I went to the drugs. And then when I started reading about Lyrica, I knew right away what had happened to her.
Did you ever believe that there could have been something else going on, like some secret that she was harboring, or some unknown stressor that she didn't want to share? That
yes,
something like that.
Absolutely. So luckily, we were able to keep her cell phone. The police let us keep it because we couldn't get in. We didn't know the password, but one call to her best friend got us in. I studied her cell phone. I just sat reading everything, looking at everything, trying to see if there was anything else in there. And I'll tell you, when you get your child's cell phone, you really get to know them. There was nothing in there. I saw all the romantic texts with her boyfriend. They were getting along very well. They were very much in love. Sorry, that seemed private, but I did read it. I saw texts with her friends. There was nothing in her life besides she did Google a lot of things about grief and sadness about losing her best friend. And she did Google things about alcoholism and how to quit drinking. But other than that, no.
Did you speak with her boyfriend or her friends afterwards? Did they
Yes.
have any, what were their reactions? What did they think had happened?
Her boyfriend was beyond devastated. He actually spent the first few weeks with me at the house, helping me research. He was so devastated. He spoke at the funeral. We were just trying to look for answers, just anything. So he helped me investigate. We were side by side. We were just trying to figure out how, in God's name, you go from a full life, being a bit sad, alcohol addiction, people do recover from that, to suicide. And I see it in 39 days, really, from the time she sought that treatment till the end.
Was anything else going on in her life apart from the loss of her friend recently that was a stressor that you could identify?
No. The day before she died, she got her eyelashes done. She drove around. She had a to-do list. There was nothing that would indicate, other than she wanted to go off the April naltrexone, and I wonder about that. But so the coroner for suicides, if I mention this, they test for a set amount of drugs in Canada. So I had to ask him for the Lyrica test. Originally, it came back non-detected because they detected blood. I read that it's short-lived in blood, post-mortem. It's 24 to 36 hours. I was determined that she had taken the Lyrica because I could see in the pictures that the bottles were empty. FYI, the police disposed of that on the way home from the scene. There was no pill count. All that evidence was lost. So we couldn't go from that. So I insisted with the coroner that he test her urine. It took me a year and 9 months to finally get him to agree to that. I was at the point where I was going to have it moved to a private lab and have it DNA tested to make sure it was hers. It came in, it was 95.45% detected. That tells me she didn't take the Lyrica within the 24 to the 36 hours. So that makes me wonder, because she told the family doctor she didn't want to increase it, if she was trying to go off it, or maybe she got addicted to it and took all 3 bottles. There's 2 theories. We'll never really know the answer for that, but it was definitely in her system.
Did you speak with any of her friends after she passed? Did they have any thoughts about what had happened?
Yes, I spoke with her friends. So they witnessed the other times that she had tried antidepressants and said that she had acted in a peculiar way when she was trying to come off them. That was kind of where we were at. Everything seemed to be linked to her tries with antidepressants. That was the only conclusion that we had really drawn. Yeah. Otherwise, the story, these stories, and you've been very patient answering a lot of the questions, because I think about it, and every time you investigate one of these things, you weigh multiple things. And what I'm hearing is that she lost a friend. She was upset about it. She was having some problems with alcohol. There didn't really seem to be additional stresses in her life. In fact, it did seem like she was quite well supported with friends and a boyfriend and parents, people that she could turn to. And then somewhat impulsively, and I say impulsively because people leave letters when they take their life, because they think about the impact it has on the people around them. And so they want to leave closure. And when you don't get a letter, you usually think about impulsivity. And what I do know about Lyrica and all of that class of medications, all the anti-epileptics, I mean, they all have suicide warnings in the warning and precautions. These are essentially the highest tier or second highest tier warnings a drug can have. And when I talk to people who have gotten worse on these drugs, they talk sometimes about just obsessive, dark thoughts that can set in. Sure, you can feel suicidal during withdrawal and things like that, but sometimes just taking the medication can lead to a lot of dark internal ruminations, and sometimes people, in the context of that, will impulsively take their life, and that's what I've seen. Yeah. Well, when I read the hospital records, this is the statement that I call the roadmap. Mm-hmm. She reports a similar experience 1 year ago, also after taking escitalopram. After 2 weeks on the meds, she went on a binge and developed weird suicidal thoughts while withdrawing. Mm-hmm. That's in the hospital records.
Yeah.
So right there, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And I called that the roadmap statement.
Mm-hmm.
It was exactly 2 weeks.
Did you ever speak much to the doctors who had prescribed the medications?
So the psychiatrist, I sent her an email 10 days after my daughter died when I figured out who she was. She answered the email, said that her heart was heavy. I was offered a meeting and I declined it because I was too heavy in grief. I said, I'm not ready yet. Later, when I asked to have a meeting with her, the hospital told me that because I complained to the College of Physicians of Surgeons of Ontario, the meeting was denied. Mm-hmm. I found out that the hospital, separate from that, I did get a meeting with the hospital eventually after 2 years, after the statute of limitations for lawsuits coincidentally runs out. You know what I'm saying? I asked multiple times to meet with the psychiatrist. I've never met her. I have no idea what she looks like. I have no idea who she is. She denied me a meeting, so I've never had one with her. And this was my daughter's first time ever seeing a psychiatrist.
What was the follow-up plan for her after she left the hospital? What was the plan they deemed was good and safe and with good oversight for someone who had just gone in supposedly for a suicide attempt?
Well, I did get an apology letter from the hospital, finally, again, after the statute of limitations ran out, and I had to request it. And they apologized for the recommendation was to reach out to family members to learn collateral information earlier in the admission process and to offer a family meeting when needed to get this information. They said, upon reflection, I'm very sorry that our program leadership, including myself, did not meet with you sooner to hear my concerns. I had a 2-hour meeting with them, and they did apologize for not having a family meeting. But the plan was to keep her on these drugs, see the family doctor. They had AA in place, and they had some other things in place that weren't going to start for months because their resources are lacking. That was the plan.
What impact did this have on your family after all of this happened?
So trauma, I'm here to tell you, does not make you stronger. It gives you sleepless nights, thoughts you don't want to have, trust issues. You name it, it happens. It's incredibly difficult. The physical pain they don't talk about enough. All of us, after she died, me for the first 3 months, I couldn't listen to music. I couldn't hear noises. My neck hurt, my back hurt, every inch of my body hurt. And I had little sores that if I scratched, they would just bleed and bleed. I looked like I had the chicken pox. Your hair falls out. It's horrendous. Getting through that is, and when I thought about Madison, she didn't get much time off of work, or she didn't get to skip a beat when her best friend died. We need to think more about helping each other out and helping get through grief. The pills are not going to cure grief, in my opinion. We just need to think more about how we're supporting each other in this world and how we need to work less, feed our soul, nurture ourselves. And there's no quick fix through it. I think with Madison, she just wanted to keep going. She wanted to fix the problem quickly. She was fiercely independent, and she was such a good daughter. She never wanted to burden me with anything. I wish she would have burdened me with this. And we just don't think of other things. Pills are prescribed too fast. Often they're the only and first resort, and they should be thought of after the fact, in my opinion. 10 minutes is not long enough to counsel someone when giving them these powerful drugs. And doctors are under a great deal of pressure to see people fast, fix the problem fast. It's not the answer. And we have young people dying. A year after Madison died at that hospital, another young lady died. Her name's Caitlin Roth. Her parents are lobbying for provincial policies to be changed with an organization called Filling in the Gaps. I made friends with her mother. We compared stories, very similar. Also, Madison's one of the people that she was in the hospital with. Because I had her phone and she was corresponding with him, I had to tell him that she passed away. We became friends. He also died since.
Okay.
So there's another one. People are being failed daily.
We've moved away from really intuitive ways of caring for people, which you've alluded to. You know, people need support during grief, you know, time away from work. They need to be with people that they love and who care about them, not to mute the feelings of the grief, but to sit with them as time heals, essentially, with these things. But I think we don't do that as a medical profession, and in some ways we don't really do it as a society, because we've become more and more disconnected and more kind of just pushed into work and other things like that. We just can't stop going. We've got so many things going on, and image and everything else. It doesn't matter. Madi was very private. You had to get things out of her. Like at her best friend's funeral, she told me, "Oh, you don't need to come, Mom." I thought, yes, I do. I got to the funeral and she said, "You don't need to sit with me, Mom." I thought, yes, I do. So I just waited, and then I crept up beside her. Eventually, she let me hold her hand. You had to work to get in there because she wouldn't ask you. My other daughter's an oversharer. God help me. She will ask for everything. So the two different personalities were in play as well. I can't think of any further questions at this time, but do you have anything that you want to share that I haven't asked you about, or maybe a message?
Yes, I have a petition in the House of Commons in Canada right now. It's, if you Google Madi's Law, MADI''S, don't forget the apostrophe, LAW. It's, I have one on change.org that's for a psychotropic drug safety waiver, which means that when a patient is prescribed a psychotropic drug for the first time, they have to have a caregiver in place that agrees to watch them, who's counseled with them. Yes, this is the one. So that was actually, it's in the House of Commons. I had to do a written petition for the House of Commons because they do not recognize petitions on change.org. So the written petition is in, it's been filed. We've received government response. I'm trying to get a sponsor, which has to be a private member of the House of Commons, of Parliament, or the government. And I'm hoping to get that law passed in Canada because I believe it would have saved my daughter's life, and it could potentially save a lot of lives. I believe in prevention. I'm not going to demonize these drugs because a lot of people take them and claim they need and they help them. But I'm for safer practices, a safer way of doing it. And I do not think that it's safe to give a powerful mind-altering drug to someone, let them leave the doctor's office and nobody knowing about it, to be counseled properly and monitor for the side effects.
That's the most reasonable thing I've ever heard. Suicidal behavior is on the warnings and precautions for all of the psychiatric medications, and the ones for epilepsy as well, just like pregabalin. And the thing that I notice about psychiatric side effects, which is so it's interesting, is doctors treat them as if it's like a rash. You know, you go into the office and they say, "Oh, do you have any side effects?" And then the person will say no, But there's something very different about behavioral change, especially when it's due to a drug. You don't realize that it's happening.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you're the worst person who can weigh in on that. They're often detected by people who can recognize the subtle changes in them. And so having that be a part of the process of prescribing these meds makes so much sense. Hey, could you keep an eye on your daughter? We've prescribed something. In some instances, they may make her worse. I'd like you just to check in on her. And if things aren't going the way that they should, bring her back.
But a 5-minute phone call would have really saved her life. I'd also like to say the paperwork that she took home from the pharmacy, nowhere on there did it say may cause suicidal ideation. So I found out that paperwork is made by vendors. The people that decide what the vendors have to put on it is Health Canada. When you're going to the pharmacy, all of Canada needs to know that the paperwork you're taking home from the pharmacy is absolutely not giving you all the information. If you want all the information, you have to Google the monograph on that drug from Health Canada. People need to know this because we have the right to know all the side effects about that drug before we take it. And I don't care if it's 1%. If there's a possible chance of suicidal ideation, I'm of the opinion that people should be told.
Louise, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your story.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.